turn to you, I was somewhat confused because I thought the court was rather clear in its ruling, but I'm happy to provide clarification if I can, if I was not clear.
Your Honor, as far as the presentation of the order is concerned, Mr. Eisenberg and I talked briefly before we met, and we would agree to, plaintiffs agree to Mr. Eisenberg's changes that he listed in his response to the presentation of the order. So if that's fine with this court, we can enter an order with those changes made.
Let me go ahead and take a look at that proposed order. Mr. Eisenberg, do you have any position different than what Mr. Thomas just said?
No, Your Honor. As to those sort of textual changes I noted, that's what we're requesting.
Well, I'm happy to look at what you both have agreed to.
I regret I did not prepare a proposed order that matches those changes, in part because I didn't have an editable copy, so we would have to hand that up to Your Honor at a later time, unfortunately. So the best I have is the bulleted list in my response on page 2.
And I always like to look at a final order. So what we can do today is I can note that you both have reached an agreement and that you're going to submit that ex parte, and I will go through and make sure the final form is acceptable to the court, and assuming it is, and I have no reason to think I would not find it acceptable, I will sign it, and if I have a question, either this court would have the ability to simply make whatever changes the court feels is appropriate and sign it, or if I thought it was substantive enough, I would want to hear from the parties, and the matter could be settled administratively. Again, I don't think that's likely.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
And then there's also a motion for clarification, Your Honor. And so for the motion for clarification, there was a question about attorney's fees. When plaintiffs brought attorney's fees to this court within the last couple weeks, there were footnotes in the motion saying that plaintiffs, I do not know how many hours that I would reasonably spend on these tasks that were occurring up to the ruling on attorney's fees, and I didn't feel comfortable estimating hours, and so I left those off the calculation for attorney's fees. And so the clarification was asking, was this court ruling on those hours as well when it made its determination on attorney's fees, or was it leaving it open for those hours to be computed as well?
I was awarding the fees that were reasonable based upon the work that had been done in the court's view, and so my ruling had captured that, and I had gone back and looked at the transcript, and I believe that's I thought that was understood by the parties. Mr. Eisenberg?
I agree. I thought it was possible that Your Honor would address fees for the fee motion litigation itself at the time, but you did not do so. When you asked the parties if we had any questions, I thought Mr. Thomas might raise a question about that, but he did not do so. But in attempting to respond to the motion for clarification, I anticipated that that was prelude to more motions of some kind about fees for the fee motion itself. And Lewis County concedes that it should pay some fees for that, and I was trying to speed the process along. And so that's why I believe that I thought Your Honor should interpret his motion for clarification as a motion for reconsideration, if you will. And yes, you should grant it and award fees for the fee motion, and I propose the same amount as in the previous case, which was $1,500. Thank you.
And what was your request?
So I submitted a declaration outlining my hours up to that point, and obviously it doesn't include today's hearing, but it was for 4,500 hours, and Lewis County's logic was that we sought fees, including the multiplier of $100,000, and this court awarded $35,000 in attorney's fees. So that's roughly a third. So what Lewis County did was, since the request was for, or the documentation was for another $4,500, they just chopped that by a third, and they said that that's reasonable. However, that doesn't enter into a lodestar analysis, and that is without any basis in law or fact, and that's a violation of Rule 11 on its face. And so this court shouldn't even consider Lewis County's argument about this, and Lewis County thinks that it's trying to speed things up, but it's really just slowing things down. This is the third time we've been in front of this court for attorney's fees recently. Lewis County knows the law on attorney's fees, and Lewis County knows that it's not appropriate just to slash attorney's fees by 2/3, by 66%.
And Mr. Thomas, and I apologize, but I don't see a declaration you did regarding this request. Again, I'm somewhat confused by the way the parties have noted this up, and I understand it's been very litigious, but that's why the court went so carefully and tried to meticulously go through each line regarding fees. And so the fact that this is being done piecemeal is frustrating, because the court takes quite a bit of time to go through and meticulously go through the record and to go through the fees requested. And I don't understand why this is being done in such a piecemeal fashion. I don't see a declaration regarding the fees that you're requesting now. Do you have a copy?
I don't, Your Honor. It was submitted about November 20th, so it wasn't submitted within the last week or two, if that helps.
Is this the third declaration?
Yes, Your Honor. And just to clarify, these fees weren't included in the motion for attorney's fees because, like I said, it would be an ethical problem for me to anticipate how many hours in the future that I would spend on things when I may not spend hours on them, and that's why they weren't included.
So what dates are the dates of the fees that you're now currently requesting, in addition to the fees the court meticulously went through regarding the last hearing? Because, again, this is done in a way that it appears that everything was resubmitted.
The hours are for November 13th, 2018, which is to review Lewis County's motion for cost and attorney's fees. November 14th, which is to draft a reply to the motion for cost and attorney's fees. November 14th, which is to draft a declaration for Brian Green. November 14th, client communications. November 14th, to draft a declaration for me, Joseph Thomas. The drive to Renton, the hearing on November 16th, the drive from Olympia. On November 20th, the draft of the proposed order for all costs and attorney's fees. November 20th, the draft motion for the presentation of the order. November 20th, the draft motion for clarification. And then it's the November 21st declaration that's in front of this court. And then there is, on December 11th, there's the review of Lewis County's motion for presentation of the order.
The court will award the fees requested by Mr. Thomas with the exception of the driving fee request. And Mr. Thomas, the court has repeatedly told you you're not entitled to those fees based upon the case law. I've given you the case that the court has cited to. So unless you have a specific argument for driving costs, the court has made its ruling clear. But in terms of the other fees requested, those will be granted.
Yes, Your Honor. We respect this court's ruling. We disagree with it, and we're just preserving that argument. We're not meaning to challenge this court.
No, and I don't take it as challenging, but when it's being requested, if you have If you want that, then please respond and provide some authority for the court to do that. I don't see legal authority for it. The court will, though, as I said, grant the fees requested with the exception of those driving fees.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I will present legal authority.
Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.